The sleek glass tower of Horizon Innovations pierced the Stockholm skyline like an icicle, beautiful, sharp, and cold. Inside the top-floor office, Alexandra Lindholm stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, her silhouette a dark contrast against the golden sunset bleeding across the harbor. In her hand, a worn silver locket caught the dying light, the metal warm from being clutched too tightly. Behind her, the conference table displayed holographic projections of financial data, acquisition contracts, and the proud blue logo of Nordstrom Enterprises, Sweden's once untouchable engineering giant, now vulnerable and ripe for takeover. "The board has unanimously approved your offer, Ms. Lindholm," her lawyer announced, his voice barely penetrating her thoughts. "Nordstrom Enterprises will be officially under Horizon's control as of 9 a.m. tomorrow." Alexandra didn't turn. Her thumb traced the delicate engraving on the locket, the initials L intertwined with tiny forget-me-nots. Inside lay the only photograph she possessed of her parents together. Her mother Ingrid, young and radiant. Beside her, a handsome man with cold eyes who had never once held his daughter. 25 years, she whispered, more to herself than anyone in the room. Tomorrow, everything changes. Her reflection showed a woman of striking beauty and unmistakable power. Sharp cheekbones, penetrating green eyes, and auburn hair swept into a severe knot. At 25, she was about to become the youngest CEO to control a dual-company empire in Swedish history. No one in the room knew what truly drove her. No one except Linnea, her CFO and oldest friend, who now approached with concern etched on her face. "Alex, are you sure about this?" Linnea asked quietly. "Once you walk into that boardroom tomorrow, there's no going back." Alexandra finally turned, slipping the locket beneath her crisp white blouse. "He didn't recognize my name on the acquisition papers. He has no idea who's coming for him. And when he does," Linnea pressed. A smile curved Alexandra's lips, not reaching her eyes. "That's the moment I've waited for my entire life." As her team filed out, Alexandra returned to the window. Night was falling over Stockholm, lights twinkling on across the city. Somewhere across town, in a penthouse he could barely afford anymore, Victor Nordstrom was likely nursing a whiskey, unaware that the daughter he'd rejected at birth was about to become his boss. She closed her eyes, remembering her mother's voice from so long ago. "Someday you'll meet your father, Alexandra. When you do, remember that his greatest punishment isn't your hatred. It's seeing the magnificent woman you've become without him." Tomorrow, Victor Nordstrom would finally meet his daughter. And nothing in his carefully constructed world would ever be the same again. Hello, my beautiful souls. I want to start by saying thank you for your patience and kindness. I know I promised to bring you this story yesterday, but life had other plans. I've been curled up battling a stubborn cold and cough that drained more energy than I expected. Still, I couldn't let another day pass without sharing something new with you. Writing this story for you all feels like a warm cup of tea for my own heart, and your support truly lifts me, especially on the days I'm not feeling my best. Now let's talk about Alexandra's journey. Imagine being rejected at birth by the one person meant to protect you, only to return years later as a powerful CEO, standing face to face with that same person. What would you do? Seek revenge or choose healing? This isn't just a story about love and betrayal. It's about finding strength where there was once pain, and maybe even redemption where there was once loss. If you're ready to walk through this emotional storm with me, please tap that like button, subscribe, and join our storytelling family. Have you ever wondered if someone who once turned their back on you would even recognize the person you've become? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's return to the very beginning, to a love story that would ripple through two families and change everything forever. Stockholm Technical University buzzed with excitement on the first day of the 1997 fall semester. Ambitious students filled the engineering building's grand hall, their voices echoing off marble columns and vaulted ceilings. Among them stood Victor Nordstrom, heir to Sweden's most prestigious engineering dynasty, his confident posture and tailored clothes setting him apart from his peers. At 25, Victor already carried himself with the authority of someone destined for greatness. His family name opened doors, but his brilliant mind kept them open. As he scanned the lecture hall for a seat, his eyes locked with a young woman in the front row. Ingrid Lindholm sat alone, her copper hair falling in waves around a face that combined delicate beauty with unmistakable intelligence. Unlike the other students who whispered about the famous Nordstrom heir, she returned to her notes, unimpressed. "Is this seat taken?" Victor asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. Ingrid glanced up, her green eyes assessing him coolly. "It is now, apparently." Her lack of deference intrigued him. By lunchtime, he'd learned she was a scholarship student from a modest background in northern Sweden, brilliant enough to have earned a place in the prestigious mechanical engineering program through merit alone. "You're the first person today who hasn't mentioned my family name," Victor said as they left class together. Ingrid smiled. "Should I be impressed by something you didn't accomplish yourself?" That challenge, the first of many, sparked something in Victor he'd never experienced, the thrill of having to earn someone's admiration rather than expect it. Their romance bloomed against the backdrop of Stockholm's changing seasons. They debated engineering theories over coffee in cozy cafes as autumn leaves fell. They sketched designs together in the university library as winter snow blanketed the city. By spring, they were inseparable, their relationship the talk of the engineering department, the aristocratic heir and the brilliant scholarship student, unlikely yet perfectly matched. "We could revolutionize the industry together," Victor would say, mapping out their future on napkins in their favorite cafe. Nordstrom Lindholm Engineering. Equal partners. Ingrid would laugh, adding her own modifications to his designs. "I like the sound of that. Partners in every way." On a midsummer night, beneath the endless Nordic twilight, Victor proposed on his family's yacht. The diamond ring sparkled almost as brightly as Ingrid's eyes when she accepted. The engagement announcement in the financial papers sent shockwaves through Stockholm's elite circles. Victor's parents, particularly his father Gunnar, received the news with thinly veiled disapproval. "The Nordstrom name has been passed down through sons for 5 generations, Gunnar reminded Victor during a tense dinner at the family estate. "Your responsibility is to continue that tradition." "Times have changed, father," Victor replied, squeezing Ingrid's hand under the table. "Ingrid's brilliance will strengthen our legacy, not dilute it." But as wedding plans progressed, the pressure mounted. Weekly dinners with his parents became exercises in endurance, with subtle and not-so-subtle reminders of Victor's duty to produce a male heir. "The Nordstrom men always father sons," his mother would say, showing Ingrid family albums filled with generations of stern-faced men. "It's practically genetic." Victor would laugh off these comments, but Ingrid noticed how they lingered, how his eyes would linger on fathers and sons in parks, how he began referring to their future children exclusively as he. Their wedding was the social event of the season, lavish yet tasteful, merging old money with new ideas. For a few blissful months, they were Stockholm's golden couple, featured in business magazines as the future of Swedish innovation. When Ingrid discovered she was pregnant just 6 months after their wedding, Victor's joy seemed boundless. He converted their spare bedroom into a nursery, painted blue before they even knew the gender. "He'll have your mind and my determination," Victor would say, his hand on Ingrid's growing belly. "The perfect Nordstrom heir." Ingrid tried to gently suggest they prepare for either possibility. "What if we have a daughter first?" "Then we'll keep trying," Victor would reply with a laugh that didn't quite reach his eyes. "But Nordstroms have sons. It's tradition." As her pregnancy progressed, Ingrid noticed Victor's obsession growing. He consulted old wives' tales, adjusted her diet based on dubious gender prediction methods, and spoke to her belly using only male pronouns. What had begun as family pressure had somehow rooted itself in Victor's mind, becoming a fixation that overshadowed their once equal partnership. "I've designed the perfect life for our son," he told her one night, showing her blueprints for a childhood bedroom that would grow with their boy into adolescence. "He'll attend my alma mater, of course, then join the company after university. And if our child wants something different, Ingrid asked, a protective hand on her belly. Victor kissed her forehead dismissively. A Nordstrom always knows his place in the world. The labor came 3 weeks early, during a fierce February snowstorm. Victor paced the hospital corridor while Ingrid fought through 18 hours of difficult labor. When the doctor finally emerged, Victor's face was alight with expectation. "Congratulations, Mr. Nordstrom. Your wife has delivered a healthy baby girl." Victor's expression froze, his congratulatory champagne forgotten in his hand. "A girl? Are you certain?" "Quite certain," the doctor replied, his smile faltering at Victor's reaction. "Your daughter is beautiful. Your wife is asking for you." Victor entered the room mechanically. Ingrid lay exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle with wisps of copper hair. "Isn't she perfect?" Ingrid whispered, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "I thought we could name her Alexandra after your grandmother." Victor stared at the infant, his face unreadable. He didn't reach for his daughter, didn't move closer to the bed. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. "Victor," Ingrid's voice trembled. "Don't you want to hold her?" "This isn't what we planned," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Plans change," Ingrid replied, her joy giving way to confusion. "She's healthy. She's beautiful. She's ours." Victor backed toward the door. "I need some air." He didn't return that night, or the next. When Ingrid was discharged 3 days later, it was her mother who came to collect her and the baby, not her husband. A week passed before Victor appeared at their apartment, his face haggard, his manner distant. He stood in the nursery doorway, watching Ingrid rock their daughter, unable to cross the threshold. "I can't do this," he said finally. "This isn't the family I was meant to have." "She's your daughter," Ingrid whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Your blood. The Nordstrom legacy passes through sons," Victor replied, as if reciting a mantra. "My father was right. This marriage was a mistake." The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later, along with a settlement offer that would have been generous if it hadn't been so clearly meant as compensation for his absence. Victor relinquished all parental rights to Alexandra, requesting that she not carry the Nordstrom name. Ingrid, her heart shattered but her spirit intact, accepted the settlement but refused his attempt to erase his daughter. Alexandra Ingrid Lindholm would know who her father was, even if he chose not to know her. As spring returned to Stockholm, Ingrid sat in the small apartment she now shared with only her infant daughter, watching Alexandra sleep in her bassinet. "It will be just us now, little one," she whispered, her finger caught in her daughter's tiny grip. "But I promise you this. You will grow up knowing you are wanted, cherished, and more than enough exactly as you are." In her daughter's face, Ingrid could see echoes of the man she had loved, the shape of his eyes, the determined set of his tiny jaw. But in Alexandra's spirit, Ingrid vowed, there would be nothing of Victor's coldness, nothing of his rigid adherence to outdated traditions. This child, rejected by her father for the simple fact of her gender, would grow up to redefine what it meant to be strong. And someday, Ingrid promised herself, Victor Nordstrom would realize exactly what he had thrown away. The modest 2-bedroom apartment in Stockholm's Södermalm district echoed with laughter as 3-year-old Alexandra chased soap bubbles across the living room. Ingrid watched her daughter's copper curls bounce with each determined step, her heart swelling with a love that sometimes felt too big for her chest. "Again, Mama," Alexandra demanded, her green eyes, so like Ingrid's own, sparkling with delight. "One more time, then bed," Ingrid promised, blowing another stream of bubbles while discreetly checking her watch. In 4 hours, she would need to be at the university where she now worked as a research assistant. Her own engineering dreams adjusted but not abandoned. Life as a single mother wasn't what Ingrid had planned, but she'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of her marriage. Their apartment was small but filled with books, plants, and Alexandra's colorful drawings. They had enough, not luxury but security and, most importantly, love. Each night, Ingrid recorded the day's events in leather-bound journals. Alexandra's first words, her precocious questions, the way she already showed an uncanny ability to understand how things worked. These journals were partly for Alexandra's future, but also a way for Ingrid to process the complex emotions of raising Victor's daughter without him. She dismantled the kitchen clock today, Ingrid wrote one evening. 3 years old, and she wanted to see the time inside. She has your mechanical mind, Victor, though you'll never know it. As promised to herself, Ingrid never spoke ill of Victor to their daughter. When Alexandra inevitably asked about her father around age 5, Ingrid showed her a single photograph. "Your father is a very important businessman," she explained carefully. "He couldn't be part of our family, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you." "Doesn't he like me?" Alexandra asked, her small face serious. "He doesn't know you," Ingrid answered truthfully. "And that's his greatest loss." By age 7, Alexandra was building complex structures with her engineering toys, creating designs that impressed even Ingrid's colleagues. 10, she was programming basic software. At 12, she won her first national science competition with a solar energy project that caught media attention. A photograph of Alexandra accepting her award appeared in Stockholm's business journal. Ingrid noticed Victor's company had taken out a full-page advertisement in the same issue, and wondered if he'd seen his daughter's face, if he'd recognized anything of himself in her determined expression. When Alexandra turned 15, Ingrid was offered a prestigious position at a renewable energy firm. Their lives became more comfortable: a larger apartment, summer holidays, college savings. Alexandra blossomed into a striking young woman with her mother's warmth and a fierce intelligence that was uniquely her own. "I want to build something that matters," Alexandra told her mother one evening as they walked along Stockholm's waterfront. "Something that changes how people live." Ingrid squeezed her daughter's hand. "You will Alskling. I've never doubted that." The headaches began that winter. Ingrid dismissed them as stress, then eye strain, then anything but what they actually were. By the time she couldn't ignore the symptoms, the diagnosis was devastating: advanced glioblastoma. Terminal. Alexandra, 18 and just accepted to Stockholm Technical University. Her parents' alma mater, transformed overnight from carefree student to fierce advocate, researching treatments, arranging second opinions, refusing to accept the prognosis. "We'll fight this," she insisted, her laptop open to medical journals at her mother's hospital bedside. Ingrid stroked her daughter's hair. "Some battles aren't meant to be won, Alexandra. But I've already had my victory, raising you." As spring turned to summer, Ingrid declined rapidly. On a rare good day, she asked Alexandra to bring her journals from the apartment. "There's something I need to tell you," Ingrid said, her once vibrant voice now thin. "About your father." She handed Alexandra the silver locket she'd worn every day of her daughter's life. Inside was the photograph Alexandra had seen before. Her parents in happier times, but now Ingrid showed her how to press a hidden catch, revealing a second, smaller compartment containing a tiny folded paper. His address, his private number, everything you might need to find him someday. "Why would I want to?" Alexandra asked, her voice hard with the anger she'd never before expressed. "Because understanding him might help you understand parts of yourself," Ingrid replied. "And because someday you might need to forgive him, not for his sake but for yours." That night, after Ingrid drifted to sleep, Alexandra began reading the journals, 25 volumes chronicling her life through her mother's loving eyes. But they contained something else too: the full story of Victor Nordstrom, the man who had walked away from his newborn daughter because she wasn't the son he'd wanted. 3 weeks later, Ingrid slipped away peacefully with Alexandra holding her hand. At the funeral, Alexandra scanned the attendees, some irrational part of her expecting to see her father there. He wasn't. That night, alone in the apartment that felt too empty, too quiet, Alexandra opened the final journal, the one her mother had kept private until now. Inside were letters Ingrid had written to Victor over the years, never sent. The last one, dated just weeks before her diagnosis, read, "She has your determination and my heart. She will change the world someday, Victor. And my greatest regret is that you chose not to be there to see it." Alexandra closed the journal, her grief momentarily displaced by a new emotion: purpose. While Ingrid raised their daughter in modest circumstances, Victor Nordstrom's life followed a dramatically different trajectory. The first 5 years after leaving his wife and newborn daughter, his career soared. Nordstrom Enterprises expanded across Scandinavia, his innovative engineering solutions earning international acclaim. From the outside, Victor appeared to have everything: wealth, recognition, the respect of his industry. His father Gunnar finally showed the approval Victor had craved, proudly introducing him at industry events as "my son, the future of Nordstrom." But his personal life remained empty. A succession of relationships with beautiful, accomplished women inevitably collapsed under the weight of his emotional unavailability. At 40, he married Sophia, a poised art dealer from a good family. The marriage lasted 3 years before she left, citing his obsession with work and inability to connect. "You live like you're trying to fill something unfillable," she told him the night she moved out. "What are you running from, Victor?" He didn't answer, but that night he found himself looking at old photographs, one in particular of a copper-haired woman whose smile once made him believe in possibilities beyond the rigid future his family had planned. By 2010, cracks began appearing in Victor's professional facade. Nordstrom Enterprises, once at the cutting edge, grew complacent under his leadership. Younger companies with fresher ideas started capturing market share. Victor responded by doubling down on traditional approaches rather than embracing innovation. His father's death that year removed the last external pressure to produce a male heir, but paradoxically intensified Victor's internal sense of failure. At his father's funeral, surrounded by business associates rather than family, Victor experienced his first moment of genuine regret about the daughter he'd abandoned. "Your father was proud of what you built," his mother told him at the reception, her own grief tightly controlled. "Was he?" Victor asked, surprising them both with a question. As he entered his 50s, Victor found himself increasingly isolated. His mother's passing left him without family. His contemporaries had children in university. Some even had grandchildren. Victor had a penthouse filled with expensive art and no one to share it with. He began noticing young women Alexandra's age at industry events, brilliant, ambitious engineers starting their careers. He would catch himself wondering if his daughter had inherited his aptitude for engineering, if she'd followed in his professional footsteps despite his absence. Once, he thought he glimpsed a young woman with copper hair at a technology conference, her profile hauntingly familiar. His heart raced as he pushed through the crowd toward her, only to find a stranger when she turned, nothing like the ghost he'd been chasing. By 2020, Nordstrom Enterprises was in serious trouble. The company that had been at the forefront of Swedish engineering for generations was now bleeding talent to more innovative startups. The board began questioning Victor's leadership, suggesting it might be time for new perspectives. "The world is changing, Victor," his oldest board member told him gently. "Perhaps it's time we changed with it." But adaptation had never been Victor's strength. He clung to control, rejecting proposals for sustainable energy divisions and digital transformation. The company's stock price reflected his stubbornness, dropping steadily quarter after quarter. In rare moments of honesty, usually late at night with a glass of whiskey in hand, Victor acknowledged to himself that something essential was missing from his life. Had been missing since the day he walked out of that hospital room. But acknowledgement wasn't the same as atonement, and pride kept him from the one action that might have begun to heal the wound, reaching out to the daughter he'd rejected. Instead, he channeled his regret into anonymous donations to organizations supporting single mothers and educational programs for young women in STEM fields. Small attempts at indirect redemption that did nothing to address the actual harm he'd caused. By early 2022, industry rumors circulated about a potential hostile takeover of Nordstrom Enterprises. Victor dismissed them publicly while privately working 18-hour days trying to shore up the company's vulnerabilities. The board was increasingly divided on whether to retain him as CEO. Then came the mysterious inquiries from Horizon Innovations, a rising star in sustainable technology founded by a young CEO whose identity was carefully guarded from public scrutiny. Their interest in acquiring Nordstrom Enterprises seemed sudden, and their resources unexpectedly substantial. When the acquisition papers arrived on Victor's desk, he barely glanced at the signature page. Had he looked more carefully, he might have noticed the elegant handwriting that bore a striking resemblance to another signature he'd once known well, on divorce papers he'd signed 25 years earlier. In the heart of Stockholm's bustling tech district, Alexandra Lindholm sat alone in a minimalist office bathed in the soft glow of her laptop screen. The city lights twinkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but her focus was unwavering. At 25, she was no ordinary entrepreneur. She was a visionary who had built Horizon Innovations from a spark of an idea into a rising star in sustainable technology. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, finalizing the last details of a deal that would change everything. Tomorrow, Horizon would acquire Nordstrom Enterprises, the very company her estranged father had once ruled with an iron fist. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a mix of triumph and something deeper, more complicated. Linnea, her closest friend and confidant, entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You're still here?" she asked, setting one down beside Alexandra. "I can't stop now," Alexandra replied, her eyes gleaming with determination. "This isn't just business. It's personal." Linnea nodded, understanding the weight behind those words. She was the only one who knew Alexandra's true identity, the daughter of Victor Nordstrom, the man who had abandoned her at birth. For years, Alexandra had hidden this secret, focusing on building her empire while nursing a quiet storm of emotions. Their friendship was a rare sanctuary, a place where Alexandra could be both fierce CEO and vulnerable daughter. But tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. The acquisition was more than a takeover. It was a reckoning. As Alexandra reviewed the acquisition strategy, her mind drifted to the man she'd met during her research, Magnus Bergstrom, Victor's loyal right-hand man. Their encounters had been charged with an unexpected spark, a magnetic pull complicated by the shadows of the past. She remembered the first time they met at a corporate event. Magnus had approached with a confident smile, his eyes warm yet guarded. "You're the woman shaking up the industry," he'd said. Alexandra had responded with cool professionalism, masking the flutter in her chest. Their conversations had grown longer, laced with subtle flirtations and unspoken questions. Yet Alexandra kept her distance, wary of the connection that threatened to unravel her carefully constructed plans. Tonight, as she prepared to make history, Alexandra felt the weight of every choice, the promise of power, the pull of old wounds, and the fragile hope of something new. Tomorrow, the past and future would collide. And Alexandra was ready. "Hello, my beautiful souls. How are you feeling about Alexandra's journey so far? Her rise from heartbreak to power is nothing short of inspiring, but the path ahead is filled with tension and unexpected emotions. Do you think revenge can ever bring true healing, or does it just create more pain? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please like, comment, and subscribe to stay with us as this dramatic story unfolds. The confrontation between Alexandra and her father is coming, and you won't want to miss a moment." The polished glass doors of Nordstrom Enterprises headquarters slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a sleek, modern boardroom bathed in soft daylight. Alexandra Lindholm stepped inside, her heels clicking confidently against the marble floor. She carried herself with the poise of a seasoned CEO, though today marked her first official visit to the company she was about to acquire. She introduced herself simply as Alexandra Lindholm, her mother's maiden name, carefully keeping her true identity hidden. The room was filled with Nordstrom's senior executives, their eyes flickering with curiosity and thinly veiled skepticism. At the head of the table sat Victor Nordstrom, the man who had once ruled this empire with an iron will, now visibly older but still radiating authority. Victor's gaze swept over Alexandra with a dismissive tilt of his head. "A young woman," he murmured, voice laced with condescension. "I hope you understand the complexities of this business." Alexandra met his gaze steadily, a faint smile playing on her lips. "I understand more than you might expect," she replied, her tone calm but charged with quiet confidence. As the meeting progressed, Alexandra unveiled a series of innovative proposals, technical blueprints, market analyses, and sustainability strategies that left the room silent in awe. Her knowledge was precise, her vision clear. Even Victor found himself leaning forward, intrigued despite himself. When she finally revealed the acquisition papers, the room erupted in murmurs. Victor's face paled as he realized the truth. This young woman was now his boss. The humiliation was sharp, a bitter pill swallowed in silence. Forced to collaborate on a critical project, Alexandra and Victor found themselves in close quarters. She observed him keenly. The subtle gestures, the way he furrowed his brow when deep in thought, the familiar cadence of his speech. Each detail stirred something unexpected within her. Victor, too, noticed the uncanny resemblance. The way Alexandra's eyes narrowed in concentration, mirroring his own, the slight curl of her smile that reminded him of a past long buried. Unease mingled with reluctant respect as the past and present collided in their shared workspace. Beneath the professional veneer, a delicate tension simmered, an unspoken connection neither dared to name, yet impossible to ignore. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything they thought they knew about family, power, and forgiveness. The office was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Victor Nordstrom, restless and unable to sleep, wandered into the company's archive room, a place he rarely visited since the company's decline. There, seated alone amidst stacks of old photographs and blueprints, was Alexandra Lindholm. She looked up, startled but composed, her eyes reflecting a mixture of determination and something softer, curiosity perhaps, or a hint of vulnerability. Victor cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Looking for something?" he asked, his voice low but edged with genuine interest. Alexandra hesitated, then gestured to a faded photo of a younger Victor standing beside a woman with copper hair. "Just trying to understand the roots of this company," she said carefully. "The vision that built it." Their conversation unfolded naturally, shifting from business to engineering philosophy. Victor found himself intrigued by her insights, her passion for innovation, her respect for tradition, and the way she spoke of progress as a bridge, not a break from the past. But then Alexandra mentioned a detail only Ingrid, Victor's late wife, would know. A small, personal anecdote about a prototype they had once worked on together. Victor's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering beneath his calm exterior. As days passed, Victor quietly began researching Alexandra's background, piecing together fragments that didn't quite add up. Meanwhile, Alexandra found herself drawn to Magnus, Victor's loyal right-hand man. Their professional interaction sparked a subtle, electric tension. Magnus admired her brilliance and resilience, while Alexandra wrestled with her growing feelings and the complicated ties to Victor. Magnus, caught between loyalty to his boss and his respect for Alexandra, struggled with his own conflicted heart. The lines between duty and desire blurred with every shared glance and lingering conversation. One afternoon, Victor confronted Alexandra directly, unable to ignore the striking resemblance she bore to Ingrid. His voice was steady but heavy with unspoken questions. "Tell me about your mother." The moment hung between them, charged with years of pain, secrets, and the fragile hope of reconciliation. Alexandra met his gaze, ready to reveal truths that would change everything. The tension in the boardroom was palpable as Alexandra Lindholm stood before Victor Nordstrom, her heart pounding beneath the calm exterior she had perfected over years. The moment she had both dreaded and anticipated for so long had arrived. Taking a deep breath, she let the truth slip from her lips. "I'm not just the CEO of Horizon Innovations," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm your daughter." The room seemed to hold its breath. Victor's eyes widened, disbelief flickering into shock. His face, usually so composed, crumpled as the weight of her words sank in. For a moment he was silent, then the dam broke. Tears welled. His shoulders shook with the force of a man confronting decades of regret and pain. But as quickly as the emotion surfaced, Victor recoiled, retreating into a shell of shame and silence. He avoided Alexandra's gaze, his withdrawal a fresh wound to her already fragile heart. To Alexandra it felt like a second rejection, one that cut deeper than the first. Meanwhile, Magnus, who had watched the revelation unfold with growing concern, sought out Victor privately. "You can't keep running from this," Magnus urged. "She's not just a business rival, she's family. You owe her the truth, and more importantly, you owe yourself a chance to heal." In the quiet of Victor's office, Alexandra stumbled upon a small, dust-covered box. Inside, a never-given birthday gift meant for a daughter he never embraced. The sight broke something open inside her, flooding her with a mix of sorrow and longing. When she confronted Victor with the gift, their conversation was raw and unfiltered. Words spilled, regrets, apologies, and the haunting question of what might have been if only things had been different. The emotional toll proved too much for Victor. Days later, he collapsed from stress and exhaustion, landing in the hospital. Alexandra sat by his bedside, the fragile threads of their fractured relationship beginning to weave toward something new: hope. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the quiet hospital room as Alexandra sat beside Victor's bed, her fingers nervously tracing the worn leather cover of Ingrid's journals. The steady beep of the heart monitor was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside her. Victor lay unconscious, pale and fragile, yet the faint furrow of his brow betrayed the turmoil beneath. Suddenly, his eyes fluttered open, and with a raspy whisper he called out, "My daughter!" Alexandra's breath caught. The words, so simple yet so profound, pierced through years of pain and silence. She reached out, gently placing Ingrid's journals in his trembling hands. As Victor's eyes scanned the pages, the weight of his past mistakes settled heavily upon him. Each word, each memory penned by Ingrid, revealed the depth of the consequences his abandonment had wrought, not just on Alexandra but on himself. Outside the room, Magnus stood quietly, offering Alexandra a steady presence amid her swirling emotions. His support was unwavering, a balm to her conflicted heart as she grappled with forgiveness and the true cost of revenge. In the stillness, Alexandra questioned everything. Had her pursuit of retribution truly been about justice, or was it a shield against the vulnerability of healing? When Victor finally spoke, his voice was raw with remorse. "I don't expect forgiveness," he confessed, eyes glistening with tears. "But I want you to know, sorry, for everything." He paused, then added with quiet resolve, "I'm ready to step down, to give you the control you deserve." In that moment, the fragile threads of their fractured relationship began to weave a new tapestry, one of hope, redemption, and the possibility of a future neither had dared to imagine. The conference room buzzed with quiet excitement as the final presentation concluded. Alexandra Lindholm stood beside Victor Nordstrom, their eyes meeting briefly before turning to the applauding board members. The project they had poured months into, a groundbreaking sustainable energy solution, was not just a success, it was a testament to what they could achieve together. Victor stepped forward, his voice steady and sincere. "Today we witness the future of Nordstrom Enterprises, shaped by a vision far beyond my own. Alexandra's leadership has not only revitalized this company but has set a new standard for innovation and integrity." The room erupted in applause, but Victor's gaze remained fixed on Alexandra, admiration and pride shining through years of regret. For the first time, he publicly acknowledged the brilliance of the daughter he had once abandoned. As the celebration continued, Alexandra found herself reflecting on the man before her, the man her mother had loved, flawed yet striving for redemption. The walls she had built around her heart began to soften, revealing glimpses of the father she had longed to know. Amid the crowd, Magnus approached, his eyes warm and earnest. "Alexandra," he said quietly, "I know this isn't simple, but I can't hide how I feel anymore. I care for you, more than just as a colleague." Her heart fluttered, caught between the promise of new love and the shadows of past pain. Forgiveness was a journey, and anger still lingered like a stubborn echo. Victor, sensing the fragile balance, committed himself to actions over words, supporting Alexandra's initiatives, honoring Ingrid's memory by establishing a foundation for young women in engineering, and seeking to rebuild trust one step at a time. Faced with the choice to publicly acknowledge Victor as her father, Alexandra weighed her desire for privacy against the healing power of truth. In a heartfelt speech at the foundation's launch, she chose transparency, embracing her past while stepping boldly into her future. The applause that followed was not just for a successful project, but for a family reunited, a legacy renewed, and a love reborn. The grand ballroom of Nordstrom Enterprises shimmered with crystal chandeliers and the soft murmur of distinguished guests. 1 year had passed since Alexandra Lindholm had taken the helm, transforming the once struggling company into a beacon of innovation and hope. Tonight was more than a celebration of business success. It was a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and new beginnings. As the crowd settled, Alexandra stepped onto the stage, her presence commanding yet warm. She held the microphone with steady hands, her voice carrying the weight of her journey. "Tonight, I stand before you not just as a CEO, but as a daughter who has reclaimed her heritage and forged her own path," she began, eyes scanning the room filled with colleagues, friends, and family. "This company is more than a legacy. It's a promise to honor the past while embracing the future." From the side of the room, Victor Nordstrom watched with pride shining in his eyes. When Alexandra introduced him as her father, the applause was heartfelt and genuine, a healing moment years in the making. Later, as the evening wound down, Magnus approached Alexandra with a small velvet box. His smile was tender, his eyes full of hope. "Alexandra, will you marry me?" Tears glistened as she nodded, the weight of past pain lifting in the promise of shared tomorrows. Victor stepped forward, placing a hand on Magnus' shoulder, giving his blessing with a quiet nod. The next morning, the trio visited Ingrid's grave, the place where so many memories and emotions converged. Alexandra laid fresh flowers beside the headstone, whispering a thank you to the mother who had shaped her strength and spirit. Holding a new locket, this one containing 3 photos, Ingrid, Victor, and Magnus, Alexandra felt a profound peace. Her journey had come full circle, not just in business but in love and family. Together, they were no longer defined by past wounds but by the new family they had chosen to build, one filled with forgiveness, hope, and enduring love. True strength is not measured by the power to seek revenge, but by the courage it takes to heal wounds, both old and new. Family is more than the blood we share. It is the love, trust, and bonds we choose to build. While our past shapes who we are, it does not have to define our future. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, freeing our hearts from the weight of bitterness and pain. It is through forgiveness that we find peace and the ability to move forward. Love, too, is resilient and can be reborn in the most unexpected ways, if only we have the bravery to open our hearts again. Alexandra and Victor's journey reminds us that healing and love often come hand in hand, transforming brokenness into something beautiful and whole. Hello, my beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey of love, loss, and redemption. Alexandra and Victor's story shows us that even the deepest wounds can heal when we choose forgiveness and open our hearts to new beginnings. If this story touched you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends so we can continue exploring these heartfelt tales together. I can't wait to bring you more stories filled with passion, hope, and sweet romance. Stay tuned for our next captivating story coming soon. Always take good care of your beautiful heart. With love.